All right, we're back under the sea, and it is turn 14. And while the rest of the world is like stuck in a gigantic war between superpowers, we're just keeping on here underwater. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a couple of turns, take you through what happened, our big plans, and then we'll do a diplomatic roundup at the end of it. So it's turn 14. Not a huge amount happened in turn 14. We got a little bit of gold from our friends and boss Atlantis in order to help get our fortress construction back on track after we lost one in 224. We got a land fort upgraded. That'll be Pelagian Explorers till the end of the days. I've talked about Pelagian Explorers before. It's a decent research mage. 75 gold, albeit non-sacred, for 11 RP. Some of them are useful in that a quarter of them are astral randoms and are thus useful for something. N1s you can use in a pinch, A1s, E1s not so much. But they're all water 1-2. So come Alteration 6, you can use them all to defend their fort in Extremis. We also walked on shore here in Gnome Peaks in 10. This is part of our deal with Team Chris, which is the Britian, Macharkan, Agarthan force. And the idea is here to have one mechanism of linking up between me and my much stronger friends, Theridos and Atlantis. So what we have here is we've basically purchased Gnome Peaks, and we're going to have the right to pass over a fort here in 1. So we can move troops across this land fort. We're going to fort this province, and they're going to have the right to move troops across that fort. This is important for them because it allows them to cut the travel time from Macharka's capital to the south immensely. 1, 2, 3, 4, as opposed to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to get to the same place. So mutual military access there. Now, ideally, we'd actually link up solidly, but we'd probably lose that war, to be honest, and it's not worth fighting over, especially as, like, you know, there are Lion Warriors just here, and just those troops there are enough to defeat every single troop I've created all game, even if I could put them on land. So this deal was about the best hope we could get. And the card we had to play in return was they're going into a war with the elves, and we would be bloody annoying to them even if we would lose afterwards. They extend, by the way, right up over here, Steppe of Wild Horses. They've got one of their multi-heroes, the Brazen Bulls. Not good, but a multi-hero. Still useful nonetheless. Theridos has got a palisade up on land, and it started to recruit a couple of actual troops, the Therodian Hoplites. Therodian Hoplites, actually, you know, pretty decent. They're by the standards of the age, a Therodian Hoplite is okay, except for the fact that somehow training stats have dropped, and unlike the Ghost versions, they don't have formation fighters. Here we are. Skills are average at best, and they are not skilled formation fighters as their predecessors were. Unfortunate for them. So, what's going to happen next? Well, in terms of our universe, we're going to drop back. And once I've dropped back, I can combine my troops and kill these trolls. I'm also going to move a force up and finally try and get into this cave system here. Meanwhile, there's the war going on with the Lankans and the elves and all of that. So, the situation we're in here is Lanka is under very, 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 very heavy pressure by the elves. So, they're vulnerable, but at the same time, we kind of don't want to put the boot in too hard to Lanka because, you know, that's brutal considering the way that they are fighting. That team's fighting on all fronts against far more powerful teams. So, because you can see Femoria is under siege, Yomi is under extreme pressure by Pangaea, and Lanka itself is under siege. So what we are going to do is we are going to inform Lanka that we are coming in, but we're also going to telegraph our movements, and in so doing we're going to try and fight a half war wherein we are in the conflict, but we're going to limit the damage we do in order to make sure that the Lankan resources prioritize elsewhere. Now, there's a risk there. The Lankans could decide to use the information we give them to butcher us and then go fight someone else. But I think with their capital under siege, they'll prioritize that. So what we will tell the Lankans is that we are securing this throne, and we're going to push up in this direction towards the capital, but we will not threaten or push onto the capital itself at this juncture, and hope that that translates into these Palankashas going back and either securing the capital or going east and fighting off in this direction, off against Pangaea, because we ourselves are not in a good position to fight these Palankashas and Bandar warriors. We do have this 60, it's a mixture of Atlantean troops and longbowmen. They'd make a good account of themselves, but they'd also probably lose. Meanwhile, Therados has got an RNG-generated Luck 3 army of Ictitors and Ictiids. They'll come on land and they'll help reinforce and hold the throne province. All good there. Finally, at some point, Atlantis is going to have to make another attempt against the PD in 136, having lost twice, but we'll see how that goes. I'm going to click along to turn 15, where some of that plays out, and work our way up towards the diplomatic update. I'm not going to talk about this war, the Elven War, and our involvement in the diplomacy in that until we get to the end of this episode. So let's click along to turn 15. All right, turn 15, and the battle for the ages happened. Atlantis has gone in again, and fuck it, Leroy Jenkins is leading the charge. And for once, Leroy Jenkins is staying behind his troops, actually not YOLOing the enemy. Fantastic. Which means this small group of light infantry can go and actually fight the 1 PD Avite commander. Look at this. This is just the most dramatic battle you have ever seen in Dominions. And he's going to... Oh, he missed with his chop. Unfortunate for him. He's down to 5 hit points. One of the shamblers hits him. He'll die. He should be harassed down. He's at defense skill 11. Oh, killed by a light infantryman. What a way to go. This guy will get killed. And we're done. Leroy Jenkins, who didn't actually Leroy Jenkins. He stayed at the back like an intelligent commander. And we finally got Silver Grove, which is the province that we had a right to, but could never overcome the 1 PD. Go us. 1 PD or 6 PD, I'm not sure. I think it might have been 6 PD or 3 PD or something. We also moved into 3 Pine Grove, which is a province that had been held by Lanka, and Lanka, as we expected, did not stay and fight. So we have seized that province, which gives us access to this lake. Unfortunately, this lake turns out to be full of 80 Amber Clan guards and Tritons, which is too rich for our blood. There is very little income. It is hard to imagine that there would be enough income in this province to justify the losses we would take if we tried to move in right now. Meanwhile, we're reinforcing this throne. The Palankashas moved north, and all these Wind Riders have come on to the capital. So our expectation is that Lanka will probably move north and try and rescue their capital, which means we're going to risk moving into 19 because we may as well link up this area. It was part of our initial strategic goals. The elves have got way enough territory as it is, and there's no reason that we shouldn't advance here. If the Palankashas do stay and fight, again, we'll probably lose. It's a risk we're taking. But hopefully we're reinforcing both Throne and 3 Pine Groves enough, and we're in good enough communication with Lanka that I'm hoping that the understanding is that, they'll prioritize other threats to their well-being, just as Yomi is prioritizing threats to their well-being over here. So that's that. So Atlantis will move north, rather. I've brought all my troops back, and I'm finally going to kill these sea trolls, and I've moved an army up here, Lake Vastness. So this is 48 turtle warriors that are going to fight 10 lava borns in a cave. See how we go. We're building rock walls down here, so that's going to be another fort there. And then as soon as I can, in fact, maybe even this turn, I'll see if I can afford it or not, we're going to get a fort up here. So we'll have land fort, water fort, water fort. And then eventually we probably need another land fort probably here. Coastal land forts have a lot of value for Pelagia because the Pelagian explorer is a good mage and because you can build your troops on land or in water. So I'd be tempted to get another fort here and then at some point fort this province as well. So I have 3 water, 3 land forts, and that's probably rich enough for my blood. It'll be very difficult to get the economy to support more than 6 production forts. Even 5 is probably a bit rich given the very limited resources I find myself working with. That's probably it in terms of movements, at least movements that we are aware of. The rest I will save for updates in a few turns. I will note that there are these Lion Warriors and Beridian Spearmen at 218. I almost guarantee they're going into 191 and invading Archocephali next turn. And you got this big pile of troops that are probably going to either walk this way into... oh geez, they might be stuck. Because ideally they'd walk into Archocephali and take advantage there, or they're going to have to walk the long way to fight on this flank. The Saramatian Varnheim front is the hardest one of this war. Varnheim's raided deep into Sarmatian territory, and you can see Hinnom is desperately moving troops to that flank in order to reinforce Sarmatia, who have, I think, 3 forts, but haven't had the resources to take this relatively weakly defended throne at this point because they've been under constant pressure by the Vanir. Feng's Vanheers are just going around chopping stuff up as they do. We'll see if they continue to chop things up in turn 16. Turn 16, and our battles were pretty okay. We took Aritzia from Lanka, which was just fine. Blue Beauty, we took the trolls, and we had sufficient numbers that they weren't able to actually do any damage to us. So this is the thing, right, with numbers. If we had gone in with half this number, we would have lost quite a few troops. Go in with a relatively small number, and suddenly things are okay. Although, it also helps when your cavalry successfully executes an attack rear on the enemy commander, who, while being a Water 3 mage underwater with regeneration 25% underwater, only has 10 prot, limited defense, and that's a whole bunch of lance charges. Stab him, guys. There we go. And that'll rout them all. Bang. So, flawless victory. Beautiful. And then in Caverns of Gold. Yes, I know it's year 1 and I'm celebrating victories over the Indies. Give me my small victories, okay? I'm Pelagia. So, small number of these guys. The Heat, Fire Resistant, the Dark Vision 50. So they're better in a cave than our guys. Their attack skill 9, defense 7. We're 7 and 8. So our guys are pretty shit in caves. We're gambling on the fact that there is a limited number of them. And they're actually split into 2 groups too. The other advantage I have is I'm pretty sure I set on fire. Yes, I did. So hopefully the javelins proc some poison as these guys close in. You can see a couple of them are poisoned. And at that close range, yeah, good damage numbers. Good damage numbers. And then it should be just a matter of getting surrounds before the heat auras. A couple of our guys catch fire. That's unfortunate. But numbers tell. So we lost 4 turtles, killing 11 lavaborn, which is a great deal. Turns out Caverns of Gold is pretty good. There's almost no one lives here, but there is a silver mine, very thematic for being an underwater cave province, so it's locked at least 60 income per turn. And an H-gem. Fantastic. Now, let's look at the situation for a second. You can see that this has been Lanka's turn. Ignoring this war, which I'm not talking about for the moment, this was a good turn for Lanka, because it's clear that they've cleared all of those Arcocephali and Sacreds off their capital. They've done that to Arcocephali at exactly the same turn, or a turn after Arcocephali has been invaded by Machaka, and thus I would assume also Agartha and possibly others. So Lanka has freed their capital. And you can also see over here, Sparkles, the Great White Bull. Sparkles will be a tremendous challenge for anyone at this stage of the game to deal with. Now, Sparkles has a few options available to him. He can go on a death ride into Tir na nog. He can go northeast to try and save Yomi from Pangaea, or he can cut north and secure his own capital. Now, or he could cut west and do exactly the same. We're hoping that he takes any option other than coming west. We certainly don't think he's going to go into this cave and take this Indy province, so I'm going to move and try and secure 234, which is the only entrance into this cave system other than this throne at 17, which is beyond my capacity to take at this point. We're discussing how 17 might be taken by a Telkeen with shock-resistant gear, but we're working on it. It looks like a Springhawk throne, which means there may be hope. So we are not going to advance. We are not going to challenge Lanka's capital itself, because to do so would be to make ourselves a target for immediate retribution. And I'm hoping that as long as we keep the communication open and our ambitions small, there will always be higher priorities for Lankan military assets. Be it rescuing Femoria, be it rescuing Yomi, be it securing their homeland again, to want to come and fight us. Considering at the moment we can kill Palankashas just with losses ourselves. We can trample Palankashas, I believe, actually. But we can't effectively fight Sparkles. So if Sparkles does come home, then yeah, I'm going to have to talk a good game in order to keep that set. But I also have great respect. This is the other thing. I have great respect for people who fight like epic last stands in these games, who don't just go AI and give up. Yomi, Lanka, Fumoria are doing their best in a challenging position where they have been jumped by a bunch of people. So that's another reason I'm not tempted to put the boot in. The team is talking about it. Some of us are more aggressive than others. I know, I think Stalin would love to get Lanka as a second capital. Giving it to Theridos would give Theridos a second coastal capital, because this province means it counts as coastal, even though it's just a lake view. Would be fantastic for Thero, but to my mind, the diplomatic consequences and the military consequences aren't worth it, especially in the context of the wider Elven War. So, Atlantis will hold still. Theridos will secure this throne, start a fort construction, secure Andoria, lock it down, and I'm going to take 234 Caverns of Tog. As all this is going, and I'm going to move this army over. As all this is going on, you should note that I am down to one province of Dominion. This beautiful, beautiful Dominion that we've got going on, I have it nowhere. My people, almost all of my population, worship freaking Killer Frost. They worship Pangea's god. They don't care about the wonder that is the god of Atlantis. They care about Killer Frost, the very real, very obvious statue of fertility that I like to imagine Pangea has like sat on the coast and just like is preaching with loudspeakers into the lake all the time, because only that can explain like the 4-candle Killer Frost Dominion there. Is this Killer Frost? Yes. 209 is Killer Frost Dominion. It looks like a long way, but it's only 2 provinces, which means... Anyway, when we come back in turn 17, hopefully there shouldn't have been any fights over here. We should have secured 234, and we'll be in a place to sort of begin checking in, or although I might check it over to turn 18 anyway. So let's get back in a sec. Okay, it's turn 17, and an opportunity has revealed itself. This turn we were able to take Cavern of Tog, rather. Resistance was minimal because Yomi cleared out most of the threats earlier, so it was just the one Skelly spammer left over. And we had enough troops that wasn't going to be a problem for us. We just clawed our way through, and just as you do in Battle Brothers, you get close enough to the Necromancer and you chop his head off, or in our case we poked him with spears. So, Yomi was able to counter-raid and hold on to Black Forest, but Yomi is not going to stay here for long. They're going to go back north. Sparkles has disappeared and not in a direction we can see, which means Sparkles has also gone either north, west, or northeast. You can see the opportunity. From Caverns of Tog, I can move here. And I think... Well, I think 2 things. I think with the elves embattled in wars elsewhere, this front is not going to be a priority for TNN. So I don't think TNN is going to look at this move and go, ooh, have to immediately divert forces and threaten and use force and throw the Pelagians out. I don't think Yomi, which is under siege by Pangea, or Lanka, which is under constant pressure, will prioritize Black Forest. And I think both of them will be amenable to my point, which is that as far as I'm concerned, Black Forest is the Holy Grail. Because if we can hold Three Pine Grove and Black Forest, then somehow, we will have established a connection between our 2 empires, not over the short Lan Bridge, where there's 2 provinces between us, but somehow we will have cut a 4-province line across this sort of continental formation here, which would be bloody fantastic. So I'm doing it. I'm going in. I'm going into Black Forest, Province 8. I will give a heads up to this team. If they choose to ambush me, then that's okay. Like, there's nothing that prevents them doing so. They are entirely within their rights to do so. I am playing a dangerous game, being very clear about the fact that we are occupying territory, but also that we're not the greatest threat. And certainly so far, they seem to agree with us because they haven't pushed us in 31 or 19. And I think if this turn we don't push the throne, that'll be our way of proving that in return, we're also not the existential threat that other teams are. If we can link across, I need to get commanders and majors into their lake so that I can seize, take control of provinces here and have recruitment zones here, and we can cooperate and operate together. There are advantages to having your team intermingled. There is a great disadvantage to having your teams disconnected in this way. So this province is worth its weight in gold for us. That was pretty much it, I think, for this turn. I lucked 68 gold. Atlantis is planning to kill the last independents in the lake relatively quickly. And then next turn, what will happen? So next turn, if we've secured this, it'll be a good sort of strategic stop point to go, hooray. It will be turn 18. We will have achieved our early game objectives of survival and also of linking our empires up. And then we'll check in and discuss the diplomatic evolution of this war and our strategy on everything to come. So let's jump to turn 18 and have a proper check. All right, it's turn 18, and yes, I got barbed here, 42 barbs in a province, which I liked because it was 3 blood slaves and 2 gems per turn. But, we can retake that, and I don't care. I don't care because, well, Atlantis took a province, which was great, but we took Black Forest, and Black Forest is not a great province. It's 26 income, 4,600 population. It is not special in any way, shape, or form, except for the fact that it is between Cavern of Tog and Three Pine Grove, and as a result, our empire is now contiguous. We can now move. It's not short, it's not easy, it's not super practical, but we can move units and majors from the small lake to the big lake and vice versa. So we are in a much better position than we once were, and I am not entirely on my own anymore. I feel more secure knowing that it is possible, maybe not practical, but possible for my allies to get to me and support in extremis if they need to do so. So that's good. Let's round up the rest of what the team did, and then let's talk about the wider geopolitical situation. In order to sort of demonstrate again that we weren't a tremendous threat, I asked Atlantis to pull their troops into Sea of Plenty, which was Stalin fully agreed with this turn, this standoff. However, for some reason, Stalin also assassinated a commander in Lanka. I'm not sure if that was a mistake or not. I think he was just meant to be spying. But we'll have to have a chat about that, because that is not the sort of thing that will avoid a escalation, which is what we want to do. We don't want to fight what is left of Lanka, because we'll lose. We just want to hold what we've got and position ourselves accordingly. We're pretty sure Yomi will send their demons back to Yomi itself, 39. Well, we'll just secure this area down here and try and be a nice low priority target. And this will have been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 7 provinces with an option on number 8 that we hopefully will secure without having to have a large fight. Over the course of this war, so we fought one group of Palankashas. We fought one group of Palankashas early on, which we won, and since then we haven't fought again, and I don't want us to fight again. We're getting to the point where we might win, but they messed up a whole bunch of Wind Riders, and I don't want to pick that fight right now. We're just going to entrench in this position and try and manage the enemy, frenemy, mutual respect situation we've got ourselves in with Lanka as best as we possibly can, while being contiguous. And of course, I'll have to reclaim the Barbarian province while Atlantis kills 206, thus bringing us to our full expand at turn 19 or 20. Pretty pathetic, but there it is, as is the fact I have 2 provinces covered by Dominion. Let's talk about the war. And when I say the war, there's actually several wars going on at once here. There's the Lanka Femoria Yomi versus Team GC and Team Elves and Team Hinnom. And Team Hinnom is clearly getting eyes on Lanka now as well. At the same time, there's a war between Team Elf and Team Hinnom, Team GC and Team Chris. And of all of these, it's Team Chris that's making the most early gains, because you'll recall Archocephali's Sacreds were all deployed over in Lanka and then got pasted. So the Archocephalian homeland was pretty wide open, and the Machakans and the Bridians and the Agathans have rolled in and are seizing, I believe they've taken Archocephali's capital and are seizing a tremendous amount of territory there. I know this is a problem because the actions of the elves have changed dramatically over the last few turns. So originally, we were even threatened with a potential nap break, as in they would attack us despite the nap after we took 3 Pine Groves, because Vanheim wanted to be able to go up and attack Lanka. And that province had been, they raided it from Lanka, Lanka raided it back, and we took it from Lanka. And we pointed out, like, Vanheim can both sail and sneak. It's not like we've cut them off in this situation, and it's not like it's part of their core territory. They raided it, Lanka took it back, we took it, anyway. Didn't appreciate being threatened with a nap break, but that was a sign that the elves were feeling very, very confident. That confidence is not so much there. This is a massive coalition war, but my observations are so far is that it's very asymmetrical in its levels of success. Team GC is distracted because they're still trying to secure Yomi, which means Pangaea has to be deployed down here, which means it's only Niflheim and Rus actively deploying up here. And of those, Rus is still deployed on Fomoria with their armor and everything, which is problematic for them because, again, it's forces they can't be deploying against the elves themselves, which means basically an Asagen by himself as Niflheim, which is not the situation I wanted to be in. Saramatia is in an even worse position because they attacked a turn or two early, which meant the elves deployed everything against them because they were the only people who were hostile at the time. Worse than that, they got the Vanheim front. The softest underbelly was definitely Archocephali. All the troops were deployed elsewhere, and it's Archocephali. It's not one of the Mega Blessed Elves. Vanheim, however, is a very tough contender, and they own all of this territory in here, and they've ripped Saramatia apart. They have destroyed a major army of Anari and supporting troops by just cutting through the skeletons faster than they can be spawned and then murdering the guys. They have raided deep into Saramatia and Hinnom's territory, and with Hinnom having to divert troops down to deal with Lanka, this is actually a really soft front, and Feng has been able to basically carve into this group. They're also a threat to GC's occupation of Fomoria, which would be problematic for him because it would rob him of the benefits of seizing that fort, which is one of the primary reasons they're waging that war in the first instance. Meanwhile, there's Team Chris, and Team Chris has got the easiest draw by far. All 3 of them were free, none of them were at war, 2 of them were forward positioned down here, Agartha and Beratos, and Machaka had the time to walk down here as well, and they were fighting Archocephali, the weakest of the 3 members of the coalition, and the one with none of their troops home. And because Agartha has so much siege strength and Machaka has so much siege strength, they've been able to roll in, take fortifications, secure capitals, and face relatively little resistance. Which means now TNN has to basically rally in order to resist the advance of both Nasagen, but also Machaka, Agartha, Beratos. We can see here Thunderstriking Wizard Thrasher is deploying in that direction. That's helpful, but against Agarthans and Lion Warriors, who are both hard-hitting units, he's not as strong. He's not as dangerous. The real strength will be the Tuatha Dé Danann, the sacred infantry units of Tinanog. And we can't know where they are because they're glamoured and stealthy. So we don't know where those troops are or in what concentrations they are available. All we know is it's likely that if I was TNN, I would deploy to reinforce former Archocephali. If I could. So that leaves the question of where do we sit in this conflict? So we've got decent relations. We've got a good friendship with Saramatia, Hinnom. They're good people. They're good friends. Hopefully we'll be able to stick with them throughout the entire game. But they're involved in a war with the elves, and they're not losing. They're suffering badly at this stage. This might be the high watermark of the Elven advance, though, given the pressure they're under elsewhere. I think Vanheim will be under pressure to pull their troops back and help their allies, or to turn on Rus. We also have, decent relations with. We got a NAP and agreement with these guys over here, and I was, we can't afford to offend the ice babies 6 is we've talked a bit with 6, who is playing Pangea, 6P. And of course, GC organised this coalition in the first instance. So not being involved at all is a really dangerous proposition, but at the same time, I owe Basil. Basilius Basil of TNN is, a good friend of Pelagia. So the situation we're going to find ourselves in is going to be walking a very difficult diplomatic tightrope. We probably have to be involved in some way. A way that satisfies our friends and allies elsewhere, but also in a sense that doesn't come off as like a rank betrayal of TNN, because I owe them. So we're going to navigate how exactly we do that. The one thing I'll say that limits everything, let's just say, even if I had absolutely no moral quandaries at all and was like, going to backstab them while they're defending themselves. So I don't think anything in the Heartland is viable for me to go after. I think I can defend my forts, just because I think TNN will lack siege strength. Great. But I don't think I can adequately push on any of this territory, because Tua and his thugs will wipe out my armies effortlessly. I am close to Conjuration 5, which will give me the ability to bring some water elementals on land, which is basically all I've got. In terms of danger of the enemy, Conj 5 and the ability to wire a bunch of these shitty little S1 W1s together to make some water elementals is about all I can do. But over here on the periphery, there's potential. It's very unlikely this area up here will be prioritized for military forces. It's very unlikely it can be defended. It's not likely to be particularly valuable. It's not cap circle or anything like that. I've got some troops up here. Atlantis will have some troops up here. There's the possibility of making moves in this zone without upsetting things too much. So I'm going to do some thinking. I'm going to have some discussions and decide what our involvement should be and how we can exercise the opportunity here. But I think whatever happens, I've ruled out any operation in the TNN Heartland. It's just not viable. And it's a step too far for me. Even if I had 500 Turtle Warriors and this was viable, I think that would be too much for me. I don't think I could do that to someone who backs me up. Because why will people do a good thing for you? Why will they back you up in future games if you're never willing to reciprocate a good thing? One good turn deserves another. So that's what we'll do. And we also have to manage the Lankan front at the same time. So what does that all mean? It means the elves are engaged in a fight for their lives. They're losing badly on one front, winning heavily on the other, and we don't have enough information, but they're probably tied on the third. We want that conflict to prevent the elves from running away with it, which is what there was a danger of the elves doing, particularly with Varnheim and TNN expanding so well. Feng and Basil just swooped through. But at the same time, if Team Chris and Team GC KO the elves instantly, then the logical step is for them to then fight each other, and whoever wins that conflict even a little bit will probably have enough thrones to win the game. So a complete elven collapse is not in our best interests. Fortunately, I don't think an elven collapse is on the cards. I think as long as TNN's army is intact and Van's army is intact, so the Vanheers and the Tuatha Dé Danann, then as much as this territory has fallen and the economic advantage squarely falls with the coalition, they'll be able to resist, because Vanheers can accomplish a lot, and we're not at the point in the game where people have lots and lots and lots of tech that allows them to smash the fancy elves. And the Elven Bless bypasses, or at least mitigates, a lot of the early challenges you'd expect to elves. The elemental resistances, for example, mean elementals are less effective against them. Fire elementals are less effective against them than they otherwise would be. So I expect the elves to make this a real fight. I expect the coalition to lose some major engagements, pushing the elves. And if we push too hard, it's just going to get us getting our face shoved in instead of someone else. And I'm not interested in taking the hit for someone else when they are strong and we are weak. And I think that's a reasonable position to take. So I will talk with my coalition buddies. Sorry, my pretender and disciple buddy. We'll work out the best mechanism for us to intervene, but for right now, I think it's going to be poking around the edges, getting my infrastructure recovered after a slow expansion phase, hitting Conjuration 5 so I have some combat potential, and then us ramping up an economy while very carefully intervening at the edges of this massive international dispute, which is the Great L4 1 and its parallel conflict, the rushing of Lanka Yomi Femoria, which is somehow still in progress at the time of L4-1, because people just couldn't wait to kick off L4-1. Anyway, that's the game as of turn 18. The next clutch of turns hopefully will take us into the 20s, and we'll cover by then, I imagine, what our plan is to engage with L4-1, what positions we're taking, probably some further developments in the Lankan conflict, our future research plans, and a few more things besides. So stick with us, and I'll see you again some other time in turn 19.